study basically for about a week to a week and a half. And yeah, and then we figured it out. So I'm on a call. Sorry, the bell's ringing, and I'm usually on call to grab the front when they're right back there making gelato.
So you say Julie went back to the East to study. What did she study?
So it was an Italian with an Italian gelato maestro who basically taught her how to make gelato through a company called Carpigiani. They make batch freezers for gelato, and yeah, it's basically they just give you kind of the gist, the big overview of how to put together recipes and things, but it's more of an approach where they use paste and powders for quick gelato basically, and we knew we didn't want to do that. We wanted to pasteurize our own milk and do everything from the very beginning, and so we kind of got the overview from that, and then we took all that information, and then she has a degree in math, and so there's a lot of calibration and spreadsheets and balancing recipes, and we really spent a couple years developing our recipes for that.
So when did you open the shop? Since you said that it actually took you a couple years to nail down the recipe.
Yeah, we started in our garage actually in 2011, and then we didn't actually open the retail shop till 2015. So it took us about 4 years to kind of get our feet under us, just doing farmers markets and events and things, knowing that we would probably eventually have either like a mobile truck or a retail operation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you say like, oh, when you like moved to Bend and then you traveled for a year and you wanted to start a business, like how come you had that idea? Did you already start a business before? Like, or what was the background?
Oh man, I've always been very entrepreneurial ever since I was a little boy. Yeah, I used to sell like Snoopy snow cones at the end of my driveway to people driving by. And yeah, I don't know. I've always just had an interest in starting my own business and kind of doing my own thing. And Julie's never really liked working for someone either. So part of that around the world trip was kind of freeing our mind and just like keeping our options open and coming up with ideas. And so we left when we got back to Oregon from that trip. We had a couple different ideas for businesses, but Bonta's the one that won out.
So how do you decide? Like if you have a couple ideas, why do you think that, oh, gelato is the best idea?
I think it was just because that's what Ben needed at the time. You know, it just really didn't have any good ice cream, and in our opinion, but and then with the tourists and Ben growing like it was, we're like, I think this could really take off. You know, especially if we did it right from the beginning and made really high quality, good gelato. We just had a good feeling that it would be successful.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I heard you saying that, you know, you see that the market, and because there's no good gelato at the time, and you also see there's growing. But how do you know if that will work?
So say that again.
How do you know if that idea will work?
Oh, how do we know if it would work or not?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, we didn't. I think that's part of like starting any business, though. You know, you have to take a risk and know that, you know, if it doesn't succeed, that you just keep your mind open and try something else. But we tried to limit the risk by starting in our garage, so we didn't have a lease. Yeah, and then, you know, we both still had full-time jobs with a child at home, and so I would go to my day job, so I still had an income, and then I would come home, we'd eat dinner, put our son down to bed, and then we would go out in the garage and make gelato till like 2 or 3 in the morning. And so there was about a year there where if I got 5 hours of sleep, it was a good night.
Wow.
Yeah, so hard work, minimizing risk. We knew there was a good chance of it being successful.
What motivated you to do that?
I think just to try to not have to work for someone, you know, like wanting to do our own thing and have our own freedom and flexibility, especially with having one child already and then knowing we were going to have more kids. Mm-hmm. it's just given us a lot of flexibility to our life.
At what point do you say, "Oh, I can totally quit my job now. It's time to jump into my passion"?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a hard decision. That's unique to everybody, I think. But for me, it was like when I knew I could replace my income with what my day job with the new business.
Mhm.
I think that's when I finally said, and I was starting to get so busy that like it was starting to take so much time, and from my other job that I would have to take days off to do events and things like that. I was like, okay, it's time to be fair to my other employer and my family. Like it was getting to be too much.
Were you afraid that it might, not go as well as you expected?
Yeah, a little bit for sure. There's always a risk. But we always tell ourselves what's the worst case scenario.
Mhm.
The worst case scenario is I go back to my old job, right?
Yeah.
Like I know they would have hired me back even if it wasn't in the exact same position, because I'd built up a good reputation there, and they liked me and I liked that job, and so that was always kind of the backup plan. We could always figure it out. We would always get day jobs per se, and it's like, why not try and take a risk? Um, it's worth it, I guess, and it's paid off for us.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing what job you had at the time?
Yeah, I would. I worked for the Oregon Department of Transportation. I was the business and operations manager there.
Uh-huh.
So I'd been at ODOT for 15 years before when I left. So quite a while.
Wow. That's interesting because you said, like, since you're a kid, you always have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, but you're also doing full-time job for 15 years.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Like I started, that's actually what brought me to Bend was the fact that I got a job with ODOT over here. I was after college, Julie and I lived in Portland for a few years just to get jobs, but knew we wanted to move to Bend, and so I took a job with the Department of Transportation, and yeah, that's kind of what got us over to Bend, and
Mhm.
did that for quite a while.
Yeah, I'm curious of why. So, like, if you always have entrepreneur spirit, how come you're not just like starting a business right after you're, graduating from college or like earlier in your life?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess at that point, I first wanted to figure out where I wanted to live,
Uh-huh.
and um, yeah, it's different now, I think, because like I think there's so much flexibility. Like when I started with ODOT, no one was working from home. I mean, we didn't even have cell phones, and so like let alone the concept of people working from home wasn't even an option. And yeah, it was just a way for me to get an income and live in a place that I wanted to live. That was probably the most important thing first, is
Mm-hmm.
like being somewhere I wanted to be just for my own well-being, because I love to hike and mountaineer and do things like that. And so, um, and just, yeah, know that ideas and things present themselves over time. And that's kind of what happened. It worked out well.
Like I believe like since you started in 2011 and having your first job in 2015, there's a lot of challenge that you need to overcome until now. What would be like, what do you think is like the biggest challenge ever had so far?
In the business.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oh, there's so many every day. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think the hardest part, at least initially, was just figuring out the whole dairy industry. Because there's not very many people like us who are small and artisan doing dairy, unless you
Yeah.
actually are like on a dairy farm and making cheese or yogurt or something and selling it direct. There's kind of yeah, that in my opinion, there's a reason you don't see very many artisan ice cream companies on the shelf at your grocery store. It's because it's very hard to start and very costly to start. But on the other hand, that's kind of why we started, is we wanted there to be a lot of barriers to entry for competition that would make it hard for others just to jump in. Um, so I think, to answer your question, it was just figuring the whole dairy industry out and all the rules and regulations and how we were supposed to build our commercial kitchen out. Even in our garage, we had to We had to bring all new power down to our house. We lived on some acreage, and we had to put in a new transformer, and we had to repipe all the electrical lines. We had to put in 2 septic systems. So it wasn't like we just like opened up the garage and started making gelato. We had to build a commercial kitchen and do all these things. I mean, we probably spent $100,000 just converting our garage into a commercial kitchen. So, and that was just to get started. And then there were all the rules and regulations with the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and how you were to make it and how you were to pasteurize the milk and cream. And so that all took a lot of time and research. There wasn't anybody I could just call up and ask, those things, at least on our scale. There's bigger dairies. So yeah, and even if I did call them up, I don't know if they'd be willing to share all that information anyway. So just being competition. So yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest. Today, I would say just managing staff and trying to be efficient and keep costs down with everything going up so much. It's a big challenge, and always in the back of your head, just to get the infrastructure in place, because like even the equipment, you can't just plug it in. It runs off like glycol cooling lines. So you have to put in a chiller, which, a new chiller can cost like $20,000-$30,000 by itself. That's just the machine that cools it. Then you have to pay someone, $10,000 to hook all that up and do all your piping and things. And then a new batch freezer costs like $35,000. It's very expensive to get into it. So that was like kind of eye-opening.
Crazy. Do you take a loan, or do you like pay out your pocket?
No, we sold our house in the last real estate boom. So we sold it in 2006, and things were kind of going crazy, and that allowed us to travel around the world, but also set aside some money to start the business when we got back.
I see. But do you guys buy another house to live, or just rent a place?
When we got back to Bend, the real estate market was kind of still in decline at that point, and so we just rented for I think a couple years, and then it kind of bottomed out, and then we bought a new house.
Timing right.
Yeah, we timed it really well, and that was the house we were actually looked for a house that had a separate detached garage that we could build the commercial kitchen in.
Yeah,
so that was part of the strategy too.
Yeah, I always say you guys definitely very smart about like timing and like financial decision.
Yeah, I'm definitely very what's the word, structured or strategic in how I make decisions, and some of it's luck and some of it's just being strategic too, and timing things as best you can.
Right. But even like I know you guys sell your house and having like kind of like money to help you to start a business. It's like question yourself like, and I'm gonna spend $100K on this.
Yeah, it's very scary, and that's part of the risk that's involved too. But we chose to buy a lot of our equipment used. So a few of those years before we started was just like researching equipment and sourcing equipment from auctions and things like that, so we could minimize the cost. And then again, just knowing that, if it didn't work out, we could always probably sell that equipment for what we bought it for at the very least.
Yeah.
So that was part of the plan too, but fortunately we didn't have to worry about that.
I think it's a question similar to what I asked, because I asked, what motivates you to have your own business, and you're talking about flexibility. But what about now? Now it's like 2022, after so many years. Is that the same motivation for you to have owning Bonta, like the gelato in Bend, or do you have a different motivation now?
Yeah, I've never been asked that. Yeah, we've kind of gone back and forth. For a while there was to really grow the company and try to get into as many stores as we could, but we've kind of stepped back from that. In fact, we're actually thinking about maybe like downsizing a little bit, because we want to stay true to our roots and why we got into the business. It was to stay small and artisan and make really good ice cream. And I think the more you scale up, the more you start to lose that, and it becomes more industrial and mass produced, and you don't get the same quality because it's really hard to do. because you're not making all the things. And so, and I think there's so much pressure, especially in America, to like always grow. Like you're not successful unless you're growing, you know? But in my mind, that's not always true. You know, if you make a good living and you're happy and you have flexibility and freedom with your business, then why continue to keep growing? And so I guess we're kind of we found a nice equilibrium where we're big enough to like, you know, employ quite a few people now and pay good wages, but still, you know, pay ourselves and, but also, you know, stay true to our roots and make really good ice cream on in an artisan way.
I'm curious, what's like balance, like I know you say, oh, we're gonna take a step back, but you also be able to like keep, making gelato and maintain the equipment, also pay your employees.
Yeah, I think it's different for every person and probably every business. It's like, you know, first you have to ask yourself why you got into the business. I mean, really evaluate your kind of goals. And for us, I think having a family and just kids, like as our kids got older and demanded, you know, I guess the demands from them became different. At first, it was taking care of babies and making, you know, my Julie kind of stepped back so she could stay home more. That was a big motivation when starting the business, is to give her the freedom to do that.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think for us, it was just making sure that our family always came first and it never became so much that we were always just like trying to choose between the business and family. And um, yeah, and so, and I think just evaluating risk too, you know, you start like getting into all these grocery stores and things and you're like, oh, that's great, you know, but you never really look at the numbers and say, well, okay, now we're in like 50 stores. Did our, you know, revenue went up, but did our profit really go up? Or, you know, now we're like busting our butts to make all these pints and these gelato to get into these stores, and the margins are so small, you know, with grocery store sales, that it's like, oh yeah, like it's probably not even worth it. And then you add the risk on top of it, like that grocery store chain could decide tomorrow to like take you out and put another brand in, and you have nothing to say about it after you've already ramped up, you know, all this production and equipment and storage. And it's just like, it's not worth, to us, it's not worth the risk.
Mhm.
Yeah, for what we got started in. I mean, some companies start out and they're like, yeah, we're just going to go as big as we can, and we may only make 25 cents off each pint, but that's okay. We're going to scale and go big, and that's how we'll make money. But that wasn't us. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, because especially in our culture, there's so much about, you know, making more money and growing. And it's hard to like say no, you know, because it's like, I'm happy where I am. People will always call you and say, oh, I want your gelato, or, you know, and it's hard to say, no, I'm not going to sell you any, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, we just have been more strategic about how, you know, what clients we take on, or customers, you know, vendors. And like I said, we're actually thinking about even maybe scaling it back just to our best clients. I think we've had opportunities to expand in other cities, or people have approached us wondering if we were franchised, but we've never done that, again, just because we kind of lose control and there's a lot of risk involved, and we
Yeah.
kind of have to, unless we were shipping the gelato or the base to that location, they'd have to kind of set up a little creamery on site, or to make, you know, similar flavors. So I think if we're going to open another retail, it'll be in Bend, maybe on the west side of Bend, where we can still manage it and make sure it's what we
Yeah.
want. Yeah, we'd actually almost rather consult than, you know, franchise, like help people get started, and they can do their own thing, you know,
Yeah.
because it's, but, you know, we never really had anyone like that was kind of like an ice cream consultant that could help you get going. I think that would be kind of fun, actually. I like that side.
Yeah. Actually, that might be a really good it's like something you're passionate about, because at that time you didn't have someone to help you, and now you have all the experience and knowledge.
Hmm. Yeah, I got 12 years of experience now, so I got a little bit figured out.
So if anyone wants to start a business, then what advice would you give to that person?
I would say, I mean, first just doing your research, and having a really good understanding of the market you're getting into, but also being passionate about whatever service you're going to offer, whatever you're going to sell, because in the beginning, for sure, it will take up so much of your time, and you want to make sure that it makes you excited every day to go to work, because if you're not, it's not going to work very well, as you probably know. And yeah, and I think just trying to minimize your risk, like we talked about earlier,
Right.
finding ways to, like, start in your house, or start with a friend, or some way to, like, just, if stuff goes bad, then you have a backup plan, and it's not going to be catastrophic, and you have to you know go do something else. Like, you can still figure it out.
Have you ever started something that actually didn't work that well and just fail?
Oh man. I don't know. I can't think of anything major. Maybe probably little things, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think again that's just making sure that you put yourself in a situation that you aren't going to fail. So, and
Yeah.
failure is a relative term too, isn't it?
Yes.
So, yeah. So if you keep a positive mindset, and like, technically you're maybe not even failing, you're learning from that and then adapting to try something similar but different.
I have a quick question about the poster you have at the background there. Is that
Oh
from,
yeah.
what is that?
Yeah, those are just some Italian food posters. Um, I actually got them from Gelato that went out of business in Seattle. So again, buying used equipment. Uh, we bought a whole store that was going out of business right down by Pike's Place, and yeah, the posters came with the store, so I put them up in the office.
That's
Uh,
awesome. What does that mean?
um, I have no idea, to be honest. I think they're, yeah, Baroni and Bitter Campari. I think it's just like a Italian food.
Yeah, I will
Yeah.
assume so. Seems like it. Do you speak any Italian?
No, no, we get asked that a lot, or if we're part Italian, but no, I'm more Swiss than anything, and yeah, no
Is this,
Italian background or roots.
yeah, all your parents from Swiss?
Yeah, German and Swiss background, and then Julie's parents, actually her great grandparents came over from the Netherlands, so
Okay.
both farming communities. We both have connections to dairy, and yeah, maybe that's why we got into ice cream.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time talking to me. I know you are super busy, so I don't want to take too much time from you.
Yeah, thanks. You had some good questions.